In this video, we're going to cover what this course looks like, what the content of the course looks like. It'll give you an overview of what to expect as you go through and what type of information you're going to be studying within this course. The course content really covers the foundations or fundamentals of what you need to know around cybersecurity. And in fact, so much so that we find that this overlaps in a lot of different certification areas. That is, there are certifications out there like the CISSP, CCNA, Network Plus, A Plus, Server Plus, ITF Plus, and Security Plus, all of which have their own different course objectives to them or certification objectives to them. But there's this overlap with cybersecurity that they have. Well, that heart of this is what we're going to cover in this course to really start understanding what cybersecurity is all about. So although this course doesn't cover all of the objectives of these certifications, I went through all of these certifications and I pulled out all of the key components to it, all the overlapping components to create this course. In our first module, we're going to start out by defining what cybersecurity is and talk about some cybersecurity concepts. Really, we have to define what it is because it's not as simple as you think it would be. There's different scopes of cybersecurity, and we're going to talk all about those different scopes and what those look like. We'll also talk about concepts such as the CIA triad and what the CIA triad looks like. We're going to talk about what threat agents are and different concepts around mitigating risk and what risk is, and talk about vulnerabilities and what vulnerabilities are. In our second module, we'll get into threats to security. What is going to threaten our cybersecurity domain, our networks, our users, anything that falls under our umbrella. And so we'll talk about those threats. We're going to talk about what threat agents are and what some of their motivations are. We're going to get into vulnerabilities and what vulnerability life cycles are. We're going to get into malware and the different type of malware that is out there. We're going to get into how people hack passwords. And then we're also going to talk about how people attack networks. Once we understand what the threats are to our network and our cybersecurity domain, then we got to start thinking about how we're going to protect against those threats. So we're going to get into a module talking about protecting against threats, things that we can start doing, and it's going to be a general overview. We're not going to get real in depth, but we're going to talk a little bit about security programs. We're going to talk about controls, frameworks, risk management, ways that we can manage the risk of our cybersecurity domain. And one of the big ways that we manage risk of our cybersecurity domain is through identity and access management. So that's going to be our next module. We're going to get into things like AAA services. That would be authentication, authorization, and accounting. We'll talk about what makes a good password and what to expect from our users, how to enforce our users to make sure that they are keeping great passwords. So we'll talk about things like complexity and substitution and how effective those are. Then we'll also get into access models, how we're going to allow access to different resources, things like role-based access control. One of the most common models with cybersecurity is the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That's really what we're trying to maintain with our networks, with our data, within our cybersecurity domain. And so we're going to get into each one of those: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. With confidentiality, we're going to talk about different types of data, how we protect that data. We'll talk about data lifecycle. We'll get into ways that we can hide that data, such as encryption and steganography. We'll also talk about encryption and where we want to encrypt data, whether it's at rest, in transit, and different forms of data and how we would want to encrypt it. Since we're talking about encryption, I wanted to take it to the next level. We're going to have a whole module on cryptography, where we're going to take a great view into what cryptography looks like. It's going to be a great module that you're going to get really well-rounded information of what cryptography looks like. We're going to talk about different types of cryptography. We're going to talk about keys and how we use keys to encrypt things and the importance of the length of the key. We're going to talk about things like symmetric and asymmetric encryption, and this is going to be a cool module. I really like cryptography. I was really excited about putting that one together, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Then we're going to get into integrity. How do we maintain integrity of our data and our systems? And so it's a very interesting topic as well. We'll talk about what's the difference between authenticity, non-repudiation, and integrity. There's some variations, although they're closely related. We'll also talk about things like digital signatures and how we can use digital signatures to verify authenticity. We'll also talk about different things like databases and how we maintain integrity within databases. We'll then take those concepts of cryptography and integrity and we're going to apply them to public key infrastructure. Public key infrastructure is what allows us to go to different websites and verify that it's the correct website and also encrypt our data. It's also really fascinating stuff. I was pretty excited when I put this together. Another one that I hope you enjoy as much as I enjoyed putting it together. We're going to talk about the process of public key infrastructure and what the process looks like. We'll talk about hierarchy trust, and then we'll also get into just the dynamics of how it works, and then what are digital certificates and how they play a part in all of it as well. Then there's that third pillar of our CIA triad. Availability. And it's a critical one because when things go down, our users report that. Our customers are unhappy. We want to make sure that we have a high availability. So we're going to talk about high availability. We're going to talk about what threats are there to high availability. We're going to talk about redundancy. We'll talk about 5 nines and what 5 nines look like. We'll talk about how to create redundancy within our network, like power redundancy. We'll talk about site redundancy. And then we'll also get into things like incident response times. So that way, when things do go down, we can recover quickly. So we got to create plans, incident response plans, so we can recover quickly. Then we'll wrap things up by talking about securing your network. This more has to deal with the hardware and the networking side of it. It's going to be an overview of all of that, but we're going to get into wireless security. We're going to talk about firewalls. We're going to talk about hardening techniques of our equipment. We're going to talk about how we can clone disks, different ways that we can manage the equipment on our network to make sure that they're secure and they're not vulnerable. So as you can see, we've got a lot of cool information that we're going to cover throughout this course. And once again, I'm excited about going along this journey with you. I had a lot of fun in putting all of this together. And once again, I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed putting it together.